Good morning, all. Good morning, Samfam. I'm Striya, Days of Samaya. Today we are going to brush up the concept of audit in automated environment, CA Inter Syllabus. Why do we have a special kind of chapter when for an automated environment? It is because of increasing adoption of IT and IT systems. Okay, what is the point that if business adopt IT? Because we auditors we have to form an opinion on data. So these data is generated and processed by IT systems. So that's why it is important we have to understand and walk through the business process in an automated environment to rely the data that we are auditing on. So this is why with increasing adoption of IT systems generate and process the data that is used in preparation of financial statements. Auditors should also often rely on data and reports that are generated from these systems. Automated environment means a business environment where process, operations, and accountings or even decisions are carried out using IS and IT. Process, operations, accounting we are mostly familiar with, but what's about the decision? The decision is about the investment decision, whether to accept an offer or reject an offer. It depends upon mostly of ROI, etc., and mostly regulatory compliances also. What are the key features of automated environment? Since it's a, like a dry kind of since it's a dry topic for the key automated environment, we'll frame the topics or we frame the will frame the points around three different categories because of less manual intervention, system driven, and its of complexity. So we'll revolve around all these three and try to figure out everything with lesser human manual intervention. So because and it's faster the business operation. These two were mostly alike. Lesser manual intervention, so it's prone to lesser human error. Because it's system driven, it is faster. Because it's faster, it provides latest information. And why something is more complex? Because of its large volume transactions and connectivity in networking capability and integration of business operations. And why it is mostly system driven? What are the advantages of system driven work? Because of its accuracy in data processing and better security and controls. That's it. We'll revolve, we have seen around these three and have completed everything. Because of lesser human intervention, less prone to human error. Because it's system driven, it is faster, it provides latest information and integrates between business operations and connectivity and networking capabilities. Because of its complex its ability to do complex transactions, large volume of transaction were also there, and because of its system driven, mostly accuracy in data processing and better security and controls. For us auditors to understand, there were different kinds of automated environments, like for the medium and large enterprise they use ERPs like SAP and Oracle, which consists of mostly custom modules depending upon the industry they are working in or the business environment it had. So it is more complex to audit for our auditors to even understand. And off-shelf accounting software or like basic versions of software which do not contain any uh, custom modules like Tally, etc., QuickBooks. And what are all the aspects that determine the level of automation and complexity? Since we are dealing with the automation and complexity, what aspects determine the complexity or level of automation is that first, how the accounting entries were documented and calculations were done automatically, and business policies and procedures and internal controls were also applied automatically. It's mostly like a questionnaire. We have to determine on what level of automation the business environment is, whether it's doing calculations automatically, yes or no. If yes, a point was there. Here we have 5 points, 5-star rating, right? Calculations. Accounting entries automatically, or we have to manually enter like tally, or it's going with an SAP where when you issue an invoice, it's get automatically accounted and reports were issued immediately. And the business policies were, whether they were applied automatically or not, whether the access security control were assigned to system roles and users. In a large organizations, we often find different kind of departments contain different kinds of usernames and uh, passwords to reset, and only IT department contains a privileged access to have passwords of every department. So we have to, it's mostly a bit of questionnaire like calculations, ABC, accounting entries, business policies, calculations, and reports. Obviously, after accounting entries, reports, and after for the business policies, we have to find out the system roles, security access, and security controls. What are the why IT is more relevant for doing an audit? Because what do business contains? It contains few operations. Operations here are internal controls and transactions and compliance. We have to check for the compliance. Have you come across like such in standards, right? Or you have to in 300 series, you have to understand the business environment and transactions. 500 series compliance, also 500 series. And increased use of systems and application software, complexity of transaction, high-tech nature, volume of transaction, company policy, regulatory requirement, standards or in standards, efficiency, effectiveness. With the operations, we could go for this increased systems and application software for the transaction. Transactions are increased in complexity and it's of high tech in nature and more volume and companies' policies. And what are they complying with? Are they complying with its company's policies, not prejudicial to any other acts, and regulatory prejudicial to the interest of the company, and regulatory requirements are whether they were complying or not, and Indian international standards like the and increase in efficiency and effectiveness of audit. So operations, transactions, compliance, enough. You just read it 2 times and you get that. Understanding an automated environment. Whenever you find an find a question in your examination regarding understanding of any environment, put it any objective there, any business environment or automated environment or any kind of IT environment also. You have to mention a point on SA 315 and write its objective. Objective of 315. And whenever you find a mnemonic in PDF like such, we Samaya, PDF of Samaya, have to know that it might be asked as a direct question, and you have to remember that and do not mismatch it with another question. Okay, here the mnemonic is I pulav. Okay, here you have pulav in your plate and a spoon and a fork, and you said glass and okay, then etc. Here interface, interface with systems, and P stand for the purpose. U stand for why that information system is used. L stand for the location of IT systems that were there, means the servers or the data bank that was there. A for architecture of, that is mostly like an IT infrastructure. You could, it was just like that. IT infrastructure in the version that was providing, and another I is whether it was in-house or packaged. And O stands for whether it's outsourced. Whenever you could easily find out the verb because of whether that is in-house or packaged, or you have outsourced a whole process. K for key persons. And whenever we find IT, we IT and risk go hand in hand. So what are the risk on usage of IT systems? When you open the window, it comes with light the dust also. So whenever you use an IT system, you could easily here are the advantages like key features, faster and connectivity, latest information, and here are all the risks that you have to face. Yeah, inaccurate processing of data. It whenever there was IT, because of its large volume of data, more risks were prone to such data and access only. So you might read it from here, or if you have already read audit in banks, mostly you could write that specific risk also, because banks also work with mostly with IT. So both risks were also the same, similar. Inaccurately processing the data, processing the inaccurate data, unauthorized access to data, unauthorized changes to systems, and failure to make necessary changes. Direct data changes, it's mostly done in backend, where if you have come across like a fraud that was rounded off all the I don't want to go into deeper, but if you have any have a bank employee who rounds off the paisa of all accounts into and pull it into his account, that's a backend data scam, or backend data direct data changes scam. Privileged access, mostly it was for the IT systems. Lack of adequate segregation of duties and loss of data. Here, segregation of duties, you find it in banks mostly. It just comes here and there often. And loss of data. It's mostly revolves around data. You have to process the inaccurate data, or inaccurately processing the data, authorization, system changes, and not making necessary changes. These were like intimate, mostly in-house. They were done mostly by specific people intentionally. What is the impact on audit due to IT risk? We'll just think of it in three different categories. Substantive audit, it's mostly not, it's like auditing the complete data, not analytical procedures, etc. And controls mostly about the internal controls. We also have to give a report on material efficiency, or material weakness and deficiencies in controls, right? And reporting is like audit reports and communicating with TCWG, etc. We'll slowly go into that. And what these IT risks how do they influence in our audit? We cannot first rely on data, because there were so many risks that were with data. We cannot rely on data, so we have to do substantially or complete data. And we have to, how do we do that substantial audit? Is by acquiring more audit evidence. That's it, as simple as that. What's the impact on controls? We have to think mostly about the internal controls. You cannot rely on automated control system or IT manual dependent manual control system. Automated controls for large enterprise, IT dependent controls is like mostly the reports that you're using of. After you find the reports and etc. calculations. So these were the two restrictions. Whenever you find any restrictions, you have to find the remedy for that. And what's the remedy is to do more substantive audit work, acquire more audit evidence, and completely and accurately. Data and reports should more, and reporting is, as we have already discussed, communicating with TCWJ and modifying the audit report. 700. Type of controls in automated environment. Here is that there were internal controls, but in an automated environment, they were comes with before an adjective, like three categories, like general IT controls, application controls, and IT dependent controls. What were such? What the internal controls were segregated into these three kind of controls were general IT controls, mostly like uh, um, we'll see the we'll synchronize with the example that we already know. It's for what kind of version of tally we have to use, or from which vendor we have to purchase that tally, or um, how often we have to update the versions of the tally. And application controls is who have to enter the tally data, etc. And IT dependent control is who could access the reports. Obviously, when you do the accounting entries or general entries into the tally, you get a balance sheet and P&L account, right? And who could access such such data is comes under IT dependent controls. We'll go deep into this. IT controls are pervasive controls. Whenever you find in pervasive control, it's mostly applied overall to the business environment, from top management and board to the department level. They're also known as indirect controls, which whenever you find an indirect control, it's mostly like a rules and regulations that were or policies and procedures that was made by the uh, top management. Your general IT controls are policies and procedures that relate to many applications and support the effective functioning of application controls. They are not direct controls. What do is they support the application controls. They're like go for a fatherly kind of thing they support, and the main hero here is application controls, and they apply to the mainframe, miniframe, and end user environment. Mainframe is like a fast super speed computer which was mostly used for R&D, and miniframe is for the departmental staff that use, or the computers that we use, which contains a lot of storage. And end user environment is a customer side, or somebody who is using the IT systems. And general IT controls general IT controls are actually policies and procedures, right? What are the objectives of such policies and procedures is integrity of information and security of data over pandas. What are pandas? Again, in a mnemonic. It is program change, application system acquisition, development and maintenance, data center and network operation, and access securities. Haven't got anything in your brain, right? These four things. We'll discuss deeper later after completing the types of controls. Application controls, like they were automated and manual controls. Automated, why they said automated here is SAPs. When as soon as you issue invoice, the entry also gets posted. Whenever manual controls, as soon as you issue a general entry, that's there's a manual intervention here. Operated at business process level, they are embedded into IT applications and help in ensuring the completeness, accuracy, integrity of data in those systems. Whenever you find a data, have to know the completeness, accuracy. And because the objective here is integrity, you're saying it in integrity. Whenever you find data, try to mention completeness and accuracy. IT dependent controls, mostly manual controls, it's mostly used by the top management, which make use of data, or we such auditors information report from IT systems and applications. Its design and effectiveness depends upon the reliability of source data. Yeah. Here we have data center and network operation. We thought of to elaborate more into these four things, right? General IT controls. Here is data center and network operations, integrity of information and security of data over data center and network operations. Like how do you secure mostly the data, and how do you um, know the integrity of the data? How do you maintain integrity of the data is through backups, recoveries from failures, any kind of failures, like uh, power failures or any kind of threats, etc. And documentation, service level agreements, performance monitoring, etc. And program change mostly about it applications. It's mostly about the applications. You have to know, you have to test change that, how to first test, and for everything you take documentation as for granted, and agreements and training. Whenever there was influence or intervention of any human into that, training also comes into picture. And whenever there's a program or software, you have to test that to program change to ensure that modified systems continue to meet the financial reporting objectives. Finan- why financial reporting objectives is that to design, implement, and monitor the internal controls is a duty of the management, and also to maintain the to prepare the financial statements is also a duty of the responsibility of the management. So we are combining the both here. We are, as we are discussing about the internal control systems, we are also implementing the final objective. Final goal is to prepare a reliable or a- as per financial reporting objectives, the financial reporting framework that was the company is following. And access date security here also, you have application security, operation system security, data security, security policies and procedures, security organization and management. It's mostly about the programs and accessing the security. If you read it two times, I think you could figure it out. Application system acquisition, development and maintenance. It's mostly about the in-house in-house. It deals mostly about the in-house applications or in-house programs that were maintained. It's like project initiation, mostly about R&D, etc., analysis and design. You have to construct, that is, you have to build and then test, and then data conversion and document and training, because people were mostly involved. It's mostly a process that was implemented for the in-house development of any program. And how do you test? We have lately seen testing it here, the application that was here and the program change, it's here, right? That this is mostly about the package software kind of things. How do you test that? There were four ways so that you could test. That is inquiry, observation, inspection, and reperformance. Inquiry is mostly used alongside with these three, and these three are individual as per their as per their perspective, but inquiry goes hand in hand with all these three. And reperformance is high in its effectiveness but low in its efficiency. Efficiency is easy to use, effectiveness is the result is most accurate. The same thing we are saying here, reperformance is most effective. I have written it efficient. Okay. And it's least efficient. Inquiry is the most efficient audit test, and it should always be used in combination with other audit testing method. Reperformance is most effective audit test, but it's very time consuming and least efficient. What are the methods of testing in automated environment? It is to obtain, okay, as we have already discussed, how do you test business process is through walkthrough is the best way, with a combination of inquiry, observation, and inspection. How do you observe? You observe how a transaction is being processed, and you have to inspect the controls, internal controls. I for inspection, I for internal controls. The inspect, you have to inspect what the department staff was doing, system logins or technical um, manual and test check. And you have to reperformance, conduct reperformance, which is most effective way to do testing of any kind of application or business process. Internal financial controls. It's actually a individual topic. As we have said, why there was financial reporting object that always coming in general IT controls is because it's the responsibility of management to maintain the internal controls and prepare financial statement. While combining that, we have said internal financial controls, which refers to policies and procedures whenever they say internal controls affecting the efficiency of operations. Whenever there's financial, there exists some kind of reporting for that. Financial reporting, how do you report? You report it with help of applicable laws and regulations. Why such regulation have come? Whenever there's finance, there exists some fraud, right? Frauds detection, prevention and detection of frauds, prevention and detection of frauds. On what area they do is through assets, for or relates to frauds relate to assets, so you have to safeguard the assets also. So internal controls, whether they were effective and efficient, and financial reporting as per laws and regulations, and you have to detect fraud, safeguard assets. There were three stages of this is something that was not so necessary. Audit approach, there were three stages. For any audit process, there are three stages, that is planning, execution, and reporting. Whenever there was there were four steps for that. And risk assessment, it mostly deals with SA 200 series, and understand and evaluate and test of operating effectiveness comes under the execution part, that is SA 300 series. And reporting comes for the last stage, that and the last step, SA 700 series. And okay, we'll go in deep. What does SA 200 say to plan? What do you plan? How do you know whether to accept an audit or not? By actually analyzing the previous years or financial statements, or previous years auditors um, work or reports, or the previous year's audit management assertions, etc. What do financial statement contains? Financial statement contains accounts and disclosures. And what does auditor comments contain? Auditor comments contain qualitative and quantitative consideration. And when they do audit, they they have already taken written representations, right? Written representations, financial statement assertions by management. And why do they give that? Because of source of misstatement, and whenever there's IT, there comes risk. That's it. You could easily write the you could easily write the all the 4 to 5 points with this. And you have to understand and evaluate. What do you have to understand and evaluate? SA 300 series 315, you have to understand the business process. How do you understand that? Through walkthrough process. You have to understand walkthrough process, and you have to document that. How do you document that? Is through flowcharts or narratives, and prepare risk control matrices. And what all the controls you have to uh, understand or evaluate, etc., is we have already seen, right? General IT controls, or application controls, or entity level controls on segregation of duties, etc. And how do you test the operating effectiveness of such internal controls? Is that nature, timing, and extent, test sample testing, testing the reports and spreadsheets. And you have to also consider, um, when we said inspection, what do? We inspect the internal controls relating to the departmental staff. At that time, we have to understand the independence of that staff. Because why do we have to do is that whenever a fraud or misstatement that was made by any staff, it is easily identifiable by the audit department. But when it was done by management, it is so much curated that it was very well designed that is very difficult to identify. So we have to also uh, understand the degree of independence that was there for the staff or the team that was there. And reporting, as we have already all way talking about the internal controls, we have to obviously evaluate the control efficiency and provide a material weaknesses. And for that, uh, whenever we have set any restriction or risk or problem, we have to give a remedial action for that control weakness. And for that, the management have to respond. And finally, audit report. For the data analytics is nothing but to analyze a large raw form of data and provide it in a small insights and meaningful visualization charts or any kind of such stuff with use of various kind of softwares, etc. Data analytics of audit. Data analytics for audit, the combination of process tools and techniques that are used to tap vast amounts of electronic data to obtain meaningful information is called data analytics. The author's tools and techniques is used in applying data analytics, also known as CATs. Means the data analytic tools that were used for audit are known as CATs. And what are what the things or what the tasks that these data analytic tools were performed is to check the completeness of data. Whenever we said data, you have to write the completeness and accuracy of data, right? And data, you have to analyze the general entries as per 240 and fraud investigation. You have to uh, know the selection of audit sampling. In order to avoid auditor to go for haphazard sampling, and recomputation, reperformance, and evaluate the impact of control deficiency. And how do you approach the usage of CAT, or the approach to use CAT? First, you have to understand the business environment. That's okay. It mostly revolves around 300 series. You have to understand the things and then report and document that. And you have to define your objectives and criteria. This is business environment and IT. What's you have to understand, you have to know what are your objectives and what's your criteria. And you have to identify the source and format of data. Format of data is nothing but if you think data was generated in a PDF format or JSON format, you have to extract that data and verify the completeness of the accurate data and apply your criteria on the data obtained, and then validate the results and then report. That's it, as simple as that, as a process. And this is how do you assess an audit finding. After all such audit, if you find an audit finding, how do you approach that? You have to know whether it's from internal control or not. If it's not something about internal control, you document it in the audit file and then conclude. But if it is from an internal control deficiency, you have to communicate with someone who is responsible for that, who are responsible to direct, implement, and control internal controls is the management. If it's management, you have to communicate with management and you have to know the degree of that, with the level of seriousness of. If it's more significant, you go to the higher authority than the management is the TCWG. If it's mediocre and you could deal it with management, you have to test the controls, and you have to find the remedial actions and obtain more evidence, additional evidence, and document the results and form an audit opinion. That's it. And this is the way how do you report the audit finding that you have find it in here. How do you report this a format like what you have observed? Here they're telling is that the passwords that to reset the password, there's no formal process. They said that the exposure is a risk that was there, and recommendation, what's the remedial action that you're saying, and for what the management is responding, and that's it. And here is a glossary. Here you could go through once, which might ask in your MCQs. And don't worry, these were all mostly what we have already discussed. And that's it. After this, do not forget to do your question bank, because doing question banks help you to face your examination, and it would help you retrieve your concepts. It's not about, I say do not award marks for how many times you have read or how many hours you have read. It awards you marks only when there were uh, only to the answer that you have put on the paper, right? That is for the retrieval and your analytical skills. So you have to concentrate more on retrieval. And see you next time, and share it with your friends if you have if you feel that would aid their preparation, and give it a like, that your you could bless the feed of your friends that were also not in touch with you. And thank you.